Hi, my name is Chris Simon, and this is my Module 10 case study for when a student's rights are wrong. And I'm sure I'm going to go long, so I'm going to dive right in. So, the facts of the case for what is happening: Miguel has returned to school with a new disability that has limited his access to classrooms. And as a result of his disability, he is no longer allowed to take the class that he was previously taking. And as a result, he'll miss out on prerequisite classes for college. So some things that didn't happen is that the Dover School District did not take steps to ensure that the buildings were compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means that they were not providing equitable access to all resources. Additionally, they did not take anticipatory actions to update their buildings in the months that it took for Miguel to return to the building. So in this case, Miguel was a quarterback. He had a very public injury. So it should not have come as a surprise to the school district that he would be returning and would need wheelchair access. So they had several months to take care of that and did not. And where did this take place? All the events that limited his access to all his classrooms occurred at Nottingham High School in the Dover School District. And to my knowledge, it was a home game. So pretty much everything happened on school property. So who was affected by this? Miguel was affected. He was a student with a disability and is now being faced with limited access to classrooms because of his new disability. And this could limit his options for his academic future. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, they are also affected. They feel like their son's future prospects are being limited because of his physical disability or because of the school not taking care of his access needs. And Ms. Guzman was also involved with this, and she feels that Miguel will not be able to enter some of the rooms. Therefore, the school merely needs to meet his science requirements for graduation in order to maintain his FAPE, or free and public education. And then also the principal, which in this case would be me, is on the hook for as the liable party for not ensuring that the facilities meet the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements for wheelchair access into all common spaces for students. So some context for this case: the student and the family have a great attitude up to the point where he's denied access to that classroom. They're likely struggling with the adjustments that the accident has caused to their family's future. And they are likely very resistant to any additional changes beyond physical ones that would happen to him. So it's very understandable why they would be upset into any new changes that would occur. Miguel and Miguel's situation are also very well known within the community, and the situation will likely have far-reaching community impacts as well, since he's such a public figure, being the quarterback for the team, and it happened in such a public way. So the legal and ethical issues involved here. Has anyone been harmed? Yes, I feel like Miguel deserves the right to be successful and therefore should not be denied opportunities based purely on his disability. In this case, I do believe that the entire reason he's being denied into that classroom is because of the wheelchair access. And so I feel like this goes against his right to a free and public education. So some legal issues that come with that is the inactions of the school likely goes against his right to FAPE because he's not able to achieve his prerequisite courses for college. And it's based solely on his disability. Also, the school is violating the Americans with Disabilities Act when they failed to have wheelchair access into their mobile education units. And regarding FAPE, the case of Andrew versus Douglas County overturned the decision in the Supreme Court that a school is only merely responsible for the bare minimum for a student to make progress. Instead, it says that a student is entitled to be challenged at their ability level. And since his cognitive abilities have not been affected by his injury, then he should still be able to participate in all classes that he's academically capable of participating in. So contract issues, I felt like the actions of the school were discriminatory because it was based purely on the fact that he now uses a wheelchair. And as the attorney referenced in the case study, the actions are in violation of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which states that a person may not be discriminated against based on their disabilities. So, as a synthesis, Miguel has returned to a high school that is not up to standards with the Americans with Disability Act, and as a result, they are in violation with providing him with his FAPE. So as far as known and unknown factors, some of the known factors, the people that we know, Miguel will not be the last student to attend this school with a wheelchair. That just is a fact. We know that several of the classrooms are inaccessible to wheelchairs due to their age and the population of the building. And we know that Miguel does not have a cognitive disability, only a physical one. Some of the unknown factors, we do not know who is responsible at the school for creating and administering a 504 plan for him to allow him to have some accommodations that will allow access for his wheelchair. And we also don't know if there have been other students that are in the building that have been denied access into these rooms just because of their disability, only it has been less public. So it's very possible that there are other students that have been discriminated against as well. And so that's an unknown factor. We do not know what resources are available to create the ramps for all the currently wheelchair inaccessible rooms. And we don't know what the exact reason is that the ramps were not created. Perhaps it was budgetary reasons, perhaps it was just neglect or just incompetence, thinking that they didn't have to do that. And then programs, we don't know what kind of IEP or likely more of a 504 plan is being created for Miguel. So to review, could the conflict or the situation or the decision be damaging to the stakeholders or the community? And I felt like, yes, Miguel's future now has to pivot to his academics instead of athletics. And he's not being allowed to take all the classes that he needs as prerequisites for college. So that's absolutely preventing him from having equitable access to opportunities that all the other students are enjoying. And the community is also likely behind Miguel, as his injury was very public, as I mentioned early. And therefore, the community is also very invested in his future and wanting him to be successful. So the individuals that have an important outcome or stake in his outcome are obviously Miguel and his family, as they're the ones that are personally invested in his future. The community likely also has a stake in his success, as he's sort of a local hero in their community. And the school has a stake in the success of it, as his success as well, as it's their reputation that's on the line. And if they're not providing him with equitable access, then they're the ones that will likely suffer the consequences of having a bad reputation as a result. Have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted? Miguel's family did notify the school with their intent to use a wheelchair. So on their end, they did notify all the stakeholders in the building. And I would assume that when the issue is not being able to have access in the science class, that perhaps the principal or the science teacher may not have been consulted when that decision was made. And hopefully, I know if I was the principal, I would have hoped that when the parents came and were upset about that decision being made, I would really have hoped that I would have been informed of that decision, that he was removed from the class prior to it being made. I also wonder if the maintenance staff were consulted about the need for wheelchair access into the mobile classrooms. So the things that I could have learned more about the situation: I would need to investigate to find out how the decisions to alter his schedule were made, like I mentioned before. If it was the sole decision of the counselor, what was her motivations behind making that decision? I would need to find out what resources will be necessary to make all the classrooms compliant with wheelchair access beyond just the biology classroom. And until this can be done, I need to learn how Miguel can still take the same classes that he was enrolled in. Like, can a ramp be constructed immediately? Can we move the biology classroom? Is there a way to make it virtually compliant until we can make it a more permanently compliant room. Do I know enough to make the decision? I felt like, yes, I do know enough to make a decision. It feels pretty obvious that he's not receiving his FAPE. So I feel confident that there are many actions that can be taken immediately to rectify the situation. So as to review, Miguel has been restricted from participating in a class he was academically qualified for based on his inability to access the room in his wheelchair. As a result, his parents have contacted a lawyer who has threatened legal action if Miguel's right to FAPE are not restored. So what are our options? I came up with a lot of options. Some of them are probably not great options, definitely not great options, but I was trying to be creative, and sometimes that's the best way to find good options. So inaction is the first option. Inform Miguel and his family that no action will be taken and that he's expected to meet the science credits that are being provided to him. There's the liberal action, which would be to reinstate Miguel to his original schedule, discipline Ms. Guzman for changing Miguel's schedule and violating his right to FAPE, shut down the classrooms that do not currently comply with the Americans with Disability Act until they do comply. The quickest action would be to apologize to the family, reinstate Miguel to his original schedule, and get maintenance crews out to immediately build an access ramp for the classroom. Other possibilities could include provide Miguel with an online option to complete his college preparatory science class. We could move the biology classroom into a room that can be accessed by a wheelchair and move a different class into the room until the updates to the building can be made. Excuse me. We could build a mobile ramp that can travel from classroom to classroom throughout the day that would meet Miguel's needs. Pros and cons of each plan. The do-nothing plan. Easiest to implement, lowest upfront cost, and no admission of guilt to the family. The cons of that are obviously highest potential for long-term legal and compensatory costs. Ethically incorrect, I feel. And it does not support the future success or well-being of the student, which is why I feel it's unethical, and it's detrimental to the school's reputation. The liberal option is also kind of the other extreme. Miguel's family would be satisfied, the building would have equitable access, and future staff will be more aware of the rules. However, you would lose some classrooms and the ability to teach other students because it would involve closing classrooms, and you would lose trust with the staff by not accepting responsibility on myself as part of this and putting it all on Ms. Guzman. Quickly building the ramp would also satisfy Miguel's family. The problem classroom would be updated and no disruption to, the current schedules would happen. The cons would be other classrooms would still not be updated. Quality of the ramp may be questionable, and there would not be a long-term solution. The online option may legally satisfy his science credits, and it may be a less expensive option. The cons would be potentially still discrimination because he's still outside of the room. Someone will still have to run the online course, so there's still work on that end, and it's just a bridge gap Band-Aid option. To move the biology room option, that would satisfy Miguel's family, and there would need to be no updates to the building. However, it would disrupt classrooms by moving, and the rooms may not be equipped with the proper equipment once they're moved. The mobile ramp option, Miguel's family would be satisfied. It's less expensive as only having one ramp instead of a whole bunch of ramps. But the cons would be someone would have to move that ramp. It's only a solution for one student, and there may be multiple students that need this ramp, and it may not be a good enough quality ramp. So to select my plan, I would use a combination of the quickest plan, the online plan, and the liberal plan. This would mean that the construction of a ramp would immediately begin, even if it needs to come at personal expense. Meanwhile, Miguel will continue his coursework online until the classroom is acceptable to him. A meeting will be held with Ms. Guzman to review what steps need to be taken in the future in order to be proactive rather than reactive. So, in order, the steps would be contact Miguel's parents, acknowledging their concerns and letting them know that Miguel will be reinstated to his original classroom. Apologize for the harm that it caused their family and assure them that the steps of the school are taking that the school is taking to be compliant with the Rehabilitation Act, as well as the Americans with Disability Act. And I would then go one step further and explain how working with the school will actually go to help future generations of students as well by providing equitable access for all. I'd rather focus on the positives of the situation and focus on how by working with us at the school, they're actually providing future access for students, and thank them for that instead of focusing on them versus the school. So try to unite them in one front. Step 4 would be to immediately contact the district maintenance crew to establish how quickly a ramp can be constructed for the biology classroom, get the fastest possible time frame, and secure funds for it by any means necessary, as I mentioned before, even if that means coming at a personal expense. Step 5, once timeline for the ramp has been established, determine how Miguel will receive instruction in the biology class until it's complete. I'd consider virtual options as well as the possible option of moving the biology classroom to an alternate location if that's an easier option. Step 6, when construction is complete, resume normal biology activity with Miguel as a normal member of the school. Step 7, now that the immediate issue has been resolved, move to petitioning the board to ensure that all classrooms and essential rooms in the building are accessible. And step 8, I would do that by citing legal precedent in conjunction with a legal action that has already been threatened against our school as leverage to push the building compliance through. If money is still an issue, I would propose fundraising options, explore grants, or even petition to utilize a bond initiative that would increase taxes in order to fund the updating of the school. I'm trying to use community support, especially surrounding Miguel's situation, to help push that through. Step 10 would to use newly acquired funds to update facilities to a more permanent access options. For safety and legal reasons, all rooms will need to be accessible. And step 11, simultaneous to all updates, I would have a meeting with Ms. Guzman and how her legal responsibility to the school and how